false core beliefs are hard to get rid of.
So today's chapter is going to be on, let's see, evidence or conclusion. Oh, this will be interesting. I've not heard this chapter. So most of us are taught that we come to a conclusion by gathering evidence. If we look at the facts of a situation, we'll be able to determine the correct conclusion. Our entire legal system is based on this, and many other scientific communities adhere to this structure of knowing this as well. But I invite you to return that concept on its head and begin to question this assumption. Is it possible that the reverse of this formula is actually true? That perhaps we come to a conclusion and then go about finding evidence to support that conclusion. This is often the case in our legal systems, and quantum physics is now revealing this reality in the scientific field as well. The observer has an effect. In our personal lives, we may encounter situations which repeat themselves over and over. That's kind of like insanity, right? We can look to evidence to support our position, or we can pause and examine our conclusions, like, so what came out of it, right? And see what happens when we focus on changing them instead. Okay. Miraculous changes occur simply by looking at our assumptions and making the inner shift to a different way of seeing the world. So it's all about our perception. That's kind of like what the steps does too. Like we don't change anything other than the way that we see it. We're still seeing the same thing. We can't change the outside thing either, but we really only could change how we see it, right? So a new pair of glasses. So if we decide that some things in life are good and some things are bad, then we find ourselves in a dualistic world where we need to be careful and keep ourselves safe. In this reality, things can go wrong. I also think that that whole judgment thing is probably not going to be good because it's all perception again anyway. And so not like the good or bad, and also it's just you have to keep yourself safe. In this reality, things can go wrong. People can be hurtful, and we need to protect ourselves from those who want to harm us, from the evils of life. We don't want to live in fear. So it says here, we can find plenty of evidence to confirm this reality. We don't necessarily need to ignore the world around us. In the end, it is up to each of us to decide what kind of world we live in. We don't need to wait for anything to change on the outside before we can inhabit the world of our choice. And what kind of world are you choosing to see today? Good question, right? So first you come up with what are your ideas about how you would like to see the world? And then I think it's good to work toward that. Take action steps that support that being a happening, right? At least, in your capacities. So when we choose to recognize that everything that happens is useful for our recovery and that it contributes to our well-being and our wholeness, we can step into a world where nothing is actually against us. In this reality, there are no enemies. It is safe to befriend the here and now, and we can trust that whatever is happening in this moment can serve our highest spiritual development. Whatever happened in the past has also served our highest spiritual awareness. I so get this, and I relate to this in happenings in my life more recently, not just like sober as opposed to not sober, right? Just like incidences. So in this way, we can have a daily living experience of being at the one with the rest of life. We can know ourselves as a part of the seamless fabric of existence. In fact, this is the only way we can experience our oneness with all that is and tap into a profound sense of peace and harmony that already exists deep within us. Letting go of our stories is the shortcut to living in a peaceful world. And when they say stories, sometimes it can even be like good stories, because it's like we shouldn't like define ourselves by, what we do, even a career. It's like, but I honestly really love I used to have a punishing God. And so in that, I had to recreate a God when I did my third step that I wanted for myself. What do I want? What is the most beautiful concept of God I could come up with, right? And I wrote it out in my third step, and then I just let it go. But as I've lived sober longer, I've expanded that concept. It's gotten bigger. My concept of God has gotten bigger, and it has to support if you get a bigger life, which honestly, if you stay sober, you will start building a life beyond your wildest dreams. You will need a spiritual fit condition to support that. Oh my God, today, if I could explain it, it's not a he or she, it's not an entity, it's not a place, it's not a thing. It's just down deep within all of us. And I get the whole, because in the omnipresence field, the oneness, how do you tap into that if you do all this segregation, good and bad, and you're in the separating, right? Because when we create separation, what do we create? Contraction, right? And smallness. Then we want to expand and feel the vastness of our being and the good in all that is. So if I look at all the good in you and you and you and you and everything that is whole, perfect, and complete, even that the bad, like it talks about in this, served a purpose for the cultivating of the strength within me to be able to endure in the next step, journey thing, the next step. Because if I don't have that strength, I may not be able to, whatever God has next for me, whatever that looks like, right? And if we keep learning the same lesson, it's because we're complacent. Something's going on that we're missing the pearl somewhere. We're missing the gem. We're missing the whatever it is, because you have to just keep trudging forward to finally be able to see it. Sometimes it doesn't come right away. It comes later. You're like, oh my God, that's why, you know what I mean? We don't always get to know right away why shit happens. Like, with your situation, which was hugely traumatic, like overcoming that, like what was the lesson? Where are the pearls for you? And it's individual. I could say it's this and that, but who am I? Like but I could tell you how it impacted my life and what wisdom and strength it's given me and other people that have experienced your story. And because it's how you perceive it that tells the story, or not really the story, but the lessons, right? What are the like? I remember somebody did fentanyl and they came back to the house talking to you like, how dare you, knowing me? But in a way that's kind of true. Like, we get a lot of people that allow us to learn from them in our lives for a reason. And we can either choose to, or we can choose not to. So we suffer more when we don't learn from wisdom. We have to do it ourselves, unfortunately. But that, and for most alcoholics, happens a lot. But if you get sober young enough, like a lot of my friends that I just visited in Hawaii with 40 years sober, they're already retired at 60, traveling the world and, doing amazing stuff. They learned quick and they kept building on those, right? And that's what I see in my friends that are sober a long time. In my experiences that teach me how to grow, I benefit the most, and when I take the opportunity to do that with it. So I think that this chapter, like really learning, is important to growth. And I think that there's a saying, it applies to this. It's like, adversities, when things happen that are difficult, are an opportunity to grow and learn. They're not a bummer just to be a bummer. They're really there for you to grow. And some of our lessons are easy and pleasant, and some of them are not. But life on life's terms isn't like always that way, is it? People get sick. I know a woman right now, I'm talking with a friend of mine. I love and respect her to pieces. And, she has cancer and she's in the hospital again. And, and she's an amazing, wise, empowered woman. And yet she's, having to go through it. And I don't wish that on anyone. I mean, it's just like, if I could take it away, I would. And I'm like, what do you tell someone who's so incredibly powerful and wonderful, like, about that? Like, there's not a lot. There's not a lot. Like, it's just like, I'm sorry you have to go through that. Like, I just send love and I pray. It's so powerful for us to pray for other people. But some of these things that happen, you just, we're powerless. But what we can do is be there for other people, because since we're all one, God, chooses certain people to be there for other people, and that timing, and I think that's all a part of it. So That said, I want to go back to the premise of it, like really, when you guys share, remember this chapter is on evidence or conclusion, So,
Can I
yeah,
share?
100%,
Okay,
yes,
okay,
please
so
do.
I think what you touched on is how you had a punishing God. And like for me, my relationship, like Allie would say, is completely, my relationship with my higher power is completely unshakable. And I think because of what happened to me, 2 overdoses where, I was completely dead and God brought me back to life. And I believe that it really did, God chose me,
Yeah.
especially chose me because I'm strong, I can get through anything. That I'm very determined, whatever I put my mind to, I can get through. And so, I just totally relate to that because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my higher power. And now my higher power is the best relationship I have in my life. I mean, it's like my good days I pray, my bad days I pray, my okay days I pray. And I'm just so proud of who I've become sober 2.5 years and my relationship that I have.
Because of that,
especially
and part of
because
it, yeah.
Yeah.